Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Thank you for watching another episode of Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School, where I break down the most intense debates, the most controversial topics, the most pressing conversations going on in our world today. It's not cable news. We don't do superficial analysis. We don't do simplistic talking points. We have deep dive conversations to get you to the bottom of everything going on in the world. So thank you for watching. Shout out to everybody who watches every night, and welcome to the people who are new to the classroom. And no matter whether you're new or whether you've been here for a long time, make sure you let us know that you're here. Hit present in the comment well. Drop that word present in so we know you're here, and also let us know where you're coming in from. This is a global classroom, so let us know what city, what state, but also what country you're writing in from, because people are here from all over the world. Also, y'all, I know some of y'all see the Marsha P. Johnson legend t-shirt I got on. If y'all don't know who Marsha P. Johnson is, we'll do a whole special night school on that too. But make sure you check it out. You can get that from UncleBobby's.com. We have these as part of our legend salute. We also have Nipsey Hussle, and of course we got the great Kobe Bryant. Some different types of legends from different types of domains. Just wanted to let y'all know, because people all have been asking me about this shirt all day, so I figured I'd break that down for you. All right, the biggest story of the day, one of the biggest stories of the week, if not the month, has been Vice President Kamala Harris's VP search. For the last week or two, people have been wondering, who is she going to choose? What is the proper complement for Kamala Harris? What will be the answer for the bottom of the ticket as she plans to wage a really intense fight, not just a debate, but a fight against Donald Trump and J.D. Vance? All right, well, today, the suspense has ended. Vice President Kamala Harris has chosen the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, as her running mate. By the way, it's pronounced Walz, not Waltz. Walz. Harris introduced Walz to supporters today at a rally in the greatest city known to human history, Philadelphia. And the campaign already dropped the first campaign ad that features Walz. They got them ads in the chamber. Check this joint out.
Sometimes life is as much about the lessons you learn as the lessons you teach. When I grew up, community was a way of life. My high school class was 24 people. I was related to half of them. I learned to be generous towards my neighbors, compromise without compromising my values, and work for the common good. My dad was in the Army, and with his encouragement, I joined the Army National Guard when I was 17. I served for 24 years. I used my GI benefits to go to college and become a public school teacher. I coached football and taught social studies for 20 years. And I tried to teach my students what small-town Nebraska taught me: respect, compromise, service to country. And so when I went into government, that's what I carried with me. I worked with Republicans to pass an infrastructure bill, cut taxes for working families, signed paid leave into law. I codified abortion rights after Roe got overturned. Because I go to work for the common good. But enough about me. Let's talk about you. Because that's what this election is about. It's about your future. It's about your family. And Vice President Harris knows that. She too grew up in a middle-class family. She too goes to work every day, making sure families can not just get by, but get ahead. We believe in the promise of America, in those values I learned in Nebraska, and we're ready to fight for them. Because as Kamala Harris says, when we fight, we win.
That is a campaign ad. It's a general election campaign ad. I'm saying that because Kamala Harris's first campaign ad had Beyonce in it. It was powerful. It was compelling. And that definitely got the base energized. But now you move from getting the base energized to getting all of America energized. And so it has much more of a middle America appeal. Tim Walz has a middle America appeal. He's somebody that really is a down-the-road centrist. He is somebody who got a lot of legislation passed in his home state. He's somebody with the kind of background that will be compelling to a lot of people: former educator, public school teacher, football coach. He's somebody who was fought to get free lunch in school. You know, he's somebody who had, I don't know, universal school meals is a big deal. labor protections, paid sick leave, stronger LGBTQ protections, reproductive rights, trying to reduce child poverty, $1 billion for housing. He is a clearly progressive liberal. I'm using that. That's kind of the space he's in. He's not a hardcore leftist. He's not a radical. He's not a progressive in the sense that I might use it. But he absolutely is somebody who is interested in making America better for working families. He's somebody who moves. I mean, he's a classic kind of old school Democrat, still corporate Democrat, still neoliberal to the core, still endorses American imperialism. Let's not be romantic about who these people are. These are not people who are going to save the world. These are not people who are going to free Palestine. These are not people who are going to abolish policing. These are not people who are going to get us reparations, which are all things that should happen. That ain't who they are. But he is somebody who will advance a progressive agenda and somebody who will at least be receptive and responsive to fighting on these domestic issues. We'll talk about foreign policy issues in just a moment, but that's who he is. But as is always the case in this country, who you are and who the media tells you are different. There are going to be mainstream corporate Democrats that are going to make you think that this guy's the most progressive, that he's the savior to the world, the same way they did with Obama, overstating the progressive bona fides. But the right wing, they also are responding to him. The right wing is responding in a different way. The right wing is taking somebody who's fairly centrist, Tim Walz, and framing him as a radical extremist. They're saying he's going to take the country over. He's part of a Marxist agenda. He's trying to force all the kids to become transgender. He is godless, that he is anti-Semitic, that he is not in favor of the free market. They will take every single thing that he has done and make it seem as if he is to the far right. To the far left, excuse me. I wish Tim Walz were as far to the left as the Republicans are trying to make him out to be. I wish Kamala Harris were as far to the left as Republicans are making him out to be. They're moderates. They're liberals. But they're being framed as this other thing. And this is what I mean when I talk about the political green screen. When it gets to Democratic candidates, people project a green screen onto them. You know, green screen on TV, that's the thing behind you when you record this, the background is green. What they do later on is they attach a background that they want. So if I had a green screen right now, you could put Cancun behind me, you could put Fallujah behind me, you could put Disney World behind me, and it would look like it. What they do with these candidates is they sometimes put radical stuff behind them, so it looks like they're these crazy radicals. That's what the right wing does. That's what Fox News and them do. Sometimes they put the progressive background behind you, so you think, oh, these people are progressives. That's what the MSNBC crowd does a lot of times. They say, oh, these people are more progressive than you think. Look at this Obama move. Look at this Kamala Harris move. Look at this Joe Biden move. When in fact, they're far closer to the center. Well, the Republicans right now are very clearly trying to take somebody who would fit the profile of a moderate Democrat and making him something else. Walz is not some insurgent. He served 6 terms in Congress. He's not anti-America, right? Even if you think about it through an imperialist lens. The man was in the military, what, 24 years? He's championed veterans issues. He was a high school social studies teacher. He is the working class person, not Donald Trump, who pretends to be working class when he's never even been to a supermarket. He was a member of the union. He was in a union and fought for a union, right? Donald Trump is a draft dodging, bone spur claiming coward. And I'm not saying you should be joining the military. Again, I don't believe in American imperialism. I'm not mad at nobody for not joining the military, but I'm just saying through a right-wing lens, if you're saying dodging the draft is the worst thing you can do, that's Trump. This dude was in the Army National Guard and rose to one of the highest enlisted ranks in the military. So I'm just saying, it's apples and oranges. So watch out for the representation and the misrepresentation of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz by the right, but also to some extent by the left as well. But there's another thing that's happening, because remember, it's not just that Tim Walz was chosen. It's that Josh Shapiro was not chosen. As you know, the two finalists were Tim Walz and Josh Shapiro, the governor of my home state of Pennsylvania. And there is a reason why Josh Shapiro was not chosen. There are good reasons why Josh Shapiro was not chosen. Josh Shapiro is to the right of even Kamala Harris on several key issues. He supports school choice, which is just free market fundamentalism, privatization of the public education system. He is undermining teachers unions and public school children by supporting the school vouchers and the school other school choice models. He's on the wrong side of fracking. He's on the wrong side of free speech when you talk about BDS, not just as governor, where you talk about sort of telling government employees how to report themselves or how to act, how to protest, basically not displaying bizarre behavior, quote unquote. But he also was on the wrong side of the Ben and Jerry's boycott moment, wanting to punish corporations and people for not wanting to support Israel's apartheid regime. You know, Josh Shapiro represents something. When Kamala Harris was chosen by Joe Biden, it sent a message to voters, right? Voters in the South, and especially Black women voters, said, we made you the nominee, Joe Biden. What are you going to do for us? And he responded with Ketanji Brown Jackson and Kamala Harris. You can agree or disagree with the choices, but the point was he was signaling to voters his policy priorities and his recognition of his base. So if we're saying your vice presidential choice signals something to somebody, then what would it mean for Josh Shapiro to be the choice when he has been even more hawkish on this genocidal war in Gaza than everybody else? And the whole U.S. imperial structure is hawkish. They all are. There are no heroes here in the American empire when it comes to Israel and Palestine. Let's be clear about that. But Shapiro's to the right of everybody else on it in practice. So Josh Shapiro wasn't chosen for domestic issues and for foreign policy issues. There was also domestically the question of a sexual sort of misconduct scandal and how his office dealt with it. He didn't have no sexual misconduct, but how his office handled it. So there's lots of reasons not to choose Josh Shapiro. If you choose Josh Shapiro, do the young people show up? Do the college students show up? Do the people who were uncommitted under Biden to voting in Michigan and who are starting to be energized under Harris make a different choice if it goes back to Shapiro in the conversation? These are concrete reasons. Again, Tim Walz has a congressional record, a military record, a public education record. He's shown that he can be moved on issues like gun rights. I'm not saying Tim Walz is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm saying that he's a clear, strategic, better choice than Tim Walz. But people are saying something different. They're saying Kamala Harris is anti-Semitic for choosing him. They say that it's part of a rising tide of anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party. This is ridiculous. Kamala Harris is not an anti-Semite. Now, she happens to be married to a Jewish person. That would at least give pause to me before I call somebody anti-Semitic. But you could be married to somebody and still be racist, right? So I don't want to presume that because how you date is how you see the people. Kamala Harris has done nothing to make people think that she's anti-Semitic. She's done nothing to make people think she's anti-Israel. If anything, she's echoed AIPAC talking points. If anything, she has been too conciliatory to Netanyahu. If anything, she has not said enough about Palestine. So to call her anti-Semitic is just flat out absurd. But this becomes another way to frame Kamala Harris on that green screen now as a radical, as a crazy person, as anti-Israel, as anti-Jewish as Donald Trump said she was. But it's all ridiculous. Anyway, are y'all surprised Harris picked Walz as a running mate? Do you think she made a good choice, or do you think Shapiro would have been better? Let me know. Put your comments in the chat. Let us know what you think. Also, hit me up on Instagram at Night School MLH. If this is your first time joining us, by the way, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. And if you're so inclined later on, hit that join button. But now I want to pivot to the question of Palestine. Because while Tim Walz presents an opportunity to open up a conversation about Palestine, we don't want to ever suggest that he has been good on the issue of Palestine. We don't want to suggest that he has been progressive on the issue of Palestine. And we don't want to suggest that he doesn't have a documented history and record in relation to Palestine that is worthy of analysis and interrogation. And who better to do that than somebody, one, who's Palestinian, and two, somebody from his home state. And so joining me right now is Sana Wazwaz. She is the chapter lead and education coordinator for American Muslims for Palestine-Minnesota. Sana, assalamu alaikum. Welcome.
Walaikum salam. Welcome. Thank you for having me.
When you hear the name Tim Walz as Kamala Harris's choice, what comes to mind? What do you think?
The first thing that comes to mind is genocide ally on so many levels. We can look at this in multiple different ways. I mean, you look at his public-facing like solidarity efforts toward Israel and towards the Zionist enterprise. And that's like, we can talk about the superficial stuff. Like we can talk about him lighting up the bridge in the Israeli colors after the October 7th situation. I never see him lighting up the bridge in the Palestinian colors after the repeated massacres against the Palestinians. I didn't see him lighting up the bridge, after every, he calls himself like a champion of education, after every university in Gaza was no longer functional, was completely demolished. Like, so we can look at the public facing efforts, but then on a more critical level, we can empirically understand like how much he is investing materially into apartheid Israel, how much he has cozied up to these institutions that are not only invested in violence in Palestine, but invested in violence in Yemen when Saudi Arabia was bombing Yemen, in Lebanon, even right here in the United States. Like we're talking about weapons manufacturers that have direct ties to brutality against Black and brown people here in the United States along the U.S.-Mexico border.
So let me pause you for a second because you've said a lot of important things. I want to make sure the audience understands each of those things.
Sure.
A lot of people think about the governor of a U.S. state as sort of being disconnected from American foreign policy, as opposed to, say, a senator or a representative in the Congress, because they're not voting. He's not voting on foreign policy legislation. He's not funding weapons per se. He's not, encouraging, security resolutions, etc. So how has Governor Walz been sort of complicit or even directly responsible for the things you're talking about in Yemen in terms of weapons? To break it down for us, what
so first of all, I mean, he is investing money like that. That's not just like a metaphor or an abstraction. Like that, he actually is materially investing. $157 million of state pension funds into companies that are complicit in Israeli occupation and other kinds of weapons companies that also were deployed in various conflict zones from Yemen to Lebanon to what have you. So and that's coming out of state tax dollars. So I think the attempt to draw a distinction between like Senator Klobuchar versus Governor Walz actually doesn't even work here, because he sits on the board of the state, he sits on the State Board of Investments. And what the State Board of Investments is, it's comprised of course, the governor, the state auditor, the attorney general, the state secretary, and they manage the retirement funds and the stocks of the state. And so he has invested, as I said, $157 million in companies such as Lockheed Martin, companies such as Elbit Systems, companies. Actually, some of the money is actually invested into the Israeli state itself, right? So these are actually, and
wow.
There has been a campaign that's been going on. Well, I could talk about the campaign later, but I guess for now, what I'm saying is like that is the biggest thing that leads me to my verdict. When you asked me earlier, what do you think of when you hear Governor Walz? I think of genocide ally, because he is using our money, and not only just using the money and just kind of shutting up about it, but he's, actively boasting about it. Back a few years ago, what was it, like 2018 or 2019, I'm pretty sure. In 2019, he approved a state grant that came out of Minnesota taxpayer money, $1.3 million, to fund the construction of a Lockheed Martin facility right here in St. Paul. And he called the effort, good news for Minnesota, right? I don't know what the good news is, right? And there's been such a long-lasting, very robust campaign to try to divest, to try to, get Governor Walz to stop investing all of this money in these weapons companies, and it's been repeatedly shut down. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it thoroughly answers my question. I want to push even more. I want people to have a clear idea of who this person is. There's been so much conversation about Josh Shapiro, and you know, I'm here in Pennsylvania, and I've known Josh Shapiro for decades, so I've been able to effectively sort of detail why Josh Shapiro is the wrong choice. But people then are going to assume that these other people are the quote unquote right choice. For me, it's about saying, okay, we have the critique of Shapiro, we have the critique, but we have to have a critique of just about anybody who's running for office here, because they're all complicit in the genocide. So how do we get there? I guess the next question I have is, how responsive has Walz been to the pushback, to the resistance? Because that's one of the arguments is that on gun reform, for example, he's come a long way in terms of having a more reasonable and humane and principled approach on guns. We've seen other people have reasonable, principled, humane approaches develop over time on abortion rights or on environmental justice and etc. Is he one of those people on the question of Palestine?
So, okay, I'm going to answer this in two ways. The short answer is no, he has not been responsive. The long answer is yes, if he has been responsive, though, that is not a testament to his virtue, but the effectiveness of our campaigns, of our grassroots campaigns. So I guess going first to the first part of the question, has he been responsive? So there was kind of a big scandal that happened a few weeks ago. He canceled a meeting on the spot, like literally on the spot, like we were in the office ready to meet with Governor Walz. A group of Gazan families and Palestinian families, including myself, were there. He canceled the meeting on the spot because what had happened was, now mind you, let me just back up a little bit. We had been trying to meet with him for over 10 months. We've been requesting meetings nonstop, and we've just continuously, been dismissed, emails ignored, phone calls ignored, what have you. So at last we get a meeting finally scheduled. And this is, mind you, 10 months into the genocide. And right away after October 7th, he was visiting synagogues. Right away, he was attending Stand With Israel rallies. So clearly he has the capacity to show up for his constituents. But he didn't do it with us. So we're like, all right, finally, it's July. We're going to get a meeting with the governor. Let's see what this is going to be like. So we come into the room. We're meeting with staffers first. It's like a pre-meeting. And the staffers ask us what it is that we actually want to talk about. And as soon as some of us answered and said, well, we don't want to just, give our victim stories and lead with our victimhood and cry and sob for the photo ops. Like, we want to actually talk about material change. We want to talk about solutions.
Right.
Two staffers got up, left the room, come back 20 minutes later, and then they're like, well, the meeting is canceled. Like,
and what reason did they give you?
Yeah, they just totally can't. And they tried to play it super diplomatically. They tried to, use this nice, optimistic sounding language. And they were like, we're really sorry about this. We care about you guys, but it's just process, and we have to think about it. And this is like goes through a different, a different group of staffers, and it's just a more
you booked a meeting with the public relations department, not the change public policy department. That's a whole different.
I mean, literally one of the staffers, I am not making this up, Mark, just verbatim says, we thought you guys were going to talk about your stories. We didn't think you guys were going to talk about divestment. Wow. Like, and I chimed in right away, and I was like, so hold on, you want us to just cry out for you guys, to just play the sob stories, but you don't actually want to talk about how we can rectify these situations? That's too far? No, it was very clear that it was all a PR stunt, right? It was very clear that what they wanted was to get the photo op and Walz can check it off his list of marginalized communities that he's been ignoring for months. Right. So anyway, but that's a tangent there. But that story is, I think, very indicative of what Walz has done repeatedly for months. He has ignored his constituents. So many people have been reaching out to him, asking him for meetings, emailing him. He has ignored all of it. I've called so many times, and I have been ignored every single time. There was an event that happened back in January. It's like MLK breakfast.
I just want to remind the audience that you are coming from the American Muslims for Palestine. And the reason I'm saying that is because I don't want people to hear, well, the governor can't answer every citizen's call, because I don't want them to misrepresent what you're saying. You're not saying in some vain or narcissistic way that the governor should be answering you. You're saying you represent a constituency and a movement and a significant organization that is being ignored by the governor.
Yeah, and just to be clear, when I say I'm actually saying I kind of generically. I do mean the movement. Like we've had memorials for folks in Minnesota that have lost over 30 in Gaza. He hasn't come out to any of these services, but he came, as I said, to the Stand with Israel rally right away. So anyway, there's been, the thing I was mentioning earlier, we were at an event called MLK Breakfast, which like every politician and their mom goes to it.
They all show up to the MLK Breakfast. That's the safe one. That's like kissing a baby.
So we go up to Governor Walz, and one of my colleagues, very simple question, just asked him, hey, Governor, how can you be memorializing MLK if you're investing my tax dollars into the murder of Palestinians? And then he says, well, you can shoot me an email and we'll talk about it. And then as soon as I chime in, this is on video, by the way, it's on our Instagram. We posted the video because we did record it. As soon as I chime in and say, well, we've been emailing and we want to know, he looks right at me, goes, thank you, and then just walks away.
Wow.
Like straight up walks away. And so we were following. So these are two examples of how he has just really, really done a great job of avoiding his constituents. But kind of to the second part of the question, kind of going back to your point about Josh Shapiro, is like, Walz the better option? Has he moved? Does he have a capacity to move based on grassroots efforts? If he has moved, and the only time he did utter the word Gaza, it was after the primaries when 1 in 5 Minnesota Democrats voted uncommitted. He got up on CNN the next day.
Right.
Got up on CNN the next day, and he's just like, for the very first time, he's all like, the situation in Gaza is intolerable, and we got to get them back. We got to get those voters back. And that's just like right there. It's like, that's the direct admission to the fact that the trajectory of the Democratic Party, the political climate has changed so much. And if Walz is moving, if Kamala is moving, if whoever is moving, they have pretty much admitted that it is because of the fact that they know that it's not sexy to be a Zionist in the Democratic Party anymore.
Right. And that's promising in a way. I mean, obviously you want the candidate that opposes genocide because it's a moral atrocity and because it's wrong, not just because it's bad for business. But there are some candidates who won't move even if it is bad for business. I mean, Joe Biden's legacy will be that even when it was very clear that standing next to Netanyahu was a losing enterprise, he still said, I'm going to stand here. At moments where it was clear that people were excited and encouraged. For example, when he said, not another weapon gets funded or sent to Israel if there is an invasion of Rafah. People applauded. And then by like the next Tuesday, what did we see? Weapons to Rafah. It's almost as if he didn't have the capacity to actually stare Netanyahu down. He didn't have the capacity to separate from what was an obvious genocide. So I don't take for granted that all politicians are going to even move when the pressure says move. I guess my question is, when you hear people saying all these candidates are terrible on the issue of Palestine, but we got to pick one, do you take that approach, or do you take the approach that many people have taken in the past, myself included, of I can't in good conscience support genocide, so I'm voting, I'm either not going to vote, I'm going to vote third party, or one the other thing. I voted Green because I'm a Green Party member. But this is the challenge you have, and I want to know your take on this as somebody on the ground doing the work.
Yeah, so just to kind of give a disclaimer, AMP is a 501c3. So what I'm about to say isn't on behalf of AMP. It's just on behalf of myself. We can't really make electoral statements. But I'm with you, Mark. I've always been, at least from what it sounds like your approach has been, I am extremely critical of the lesser of two evils approach, because I think when we as a collective have normalized this idea that we only have two candidates and that we are stuck between these two, I feel like it kind of adds up all these individuals that feel like they only have these two options. And then, of course, we're going to be perpetually locked in this binary. Like we're never going to challenge this status quo. And so I have been very pleased with the recent campaigns for folks to vote third party. And I think we can see that an incremental shift that does signal that there is a large grassroots movement that is going to be very effective in the coming years. I think some people will sometimes push back against the move to vote third party, because they'll say something to the effect of like, well, a vote for third party is a vote for Trump. And do you really, you really want Trump in office, or you want this person in office or that person in office? And I take so much issue with that sentiment, because I think it's just so short-sighted. Yes, I mean, could somebody say that Trump is worse than Biden? Of course, right? But is perpetually voting for Biden because we don't want Trump, like, where is the accountability for the party? What are the mechanisms to be able to bring accountability to the party and to show them, well, in the long term, maybe we'll have better options. Maybe it isn't two congruent evils. Maybe there is.
That's a really important point. And what I've always resented is the framing of this as a failure of the voter and not of the Democratic Party for not presenting an actual viable, reasonable candidate. If they did, then people would vote, their interest in the Democratic Party as opposed to outside of the Democratic Party. I think what I've struggled with as I think about both domestic and foreign policy issues more recently is sort of how to thread that needle, right? Like, Trump, I think, is materially worse for Palestine than Biden. I'm just thinking about things like UNRWA or vetoing security resolutions at a moment where I think the tide is turning, providing even more weapons. There's a reason why Netanyahu prefers Trump to win. But I don't romanticize who Democrats are. They're all imperial leaders. They're all ultimately enabling the genocide. So the question for me is, which outcome gives us the best space to resist, to fight, to struggle another day? I think this time around the answer is Harris, and so that's where I would put my lot at this moment. But I don't vote shame people, and I don't believe it's wrong to vote the other way. I don't think it's wrong to vote the other way, meaning third party. I don't think it's wrong to vote third party. I don't think it's wrong to vote Green or to vote for Cornell or Claudia or anyone else. I think these are all people who send a very clear message to the Democratic Party, and I hope the Democratic Party listens at some point to the answer that they're getting from the ground. What I wondered from you, what does that answer look like? What is the proper, like if you were in the administration of whoever wins, what would the proper U.S. role be right now with regard to Israel-Palestine, specifically with Gaza, but even more broadly?
Yeah, so I think it's pretty straightforward. I echo the demands of the BDS movement. Obviously, first ceasefire now, right? And then once we get that ceasefire, ending all U.S. aid to Israel, an arms embargo, and pressuring for an end to of course, the occupation couldn't exist without the United States support, but an end to the occupation, and a right of return of the Palestinian refugees, and an end to the apartheid system. Now, somebody probably asked a step forward, one state versus the two states. AMP does not take a stance on the one state versus the two state question, but we have always been, we want to defer to the Palestinians on the ground to decide their future.
Which makes sense. Makes sense. Now, some of those demands aren't directly U.S. related. I mean, they're U.S. related in the big picture. Again, we fund the occupation, we enable it, we give protection, all these things. Are there any policy moves that U.S. could do to help bring about those things? For example, like in the ceasefire, one way to start a ceasefire is to stop giving people weapons, right? So the U.S. could have a weapons embargo immediately. The U.S. could stop sending money immediately, and as a condition of whatever, right? You could just say that's one way to stop the Operation Swords of Iron, whatever the BS name they call the genocide in Gaza right now. Mm-hmm. In terms of achieving the other goals of right of return, of redrawing, going back to the pre-67 lines, the BDS demands. Is there anything else you'd like to see the U.S. do from a policy perspective other than funding? Is there anything we could think about? Is there anything else we should be doing to help achieve those goals?
Well, for one, use our leverage on the Security Council. I mean, at most, the United States has decided not to veto something, which cool.
Right. Profile of courage.
Put it down, right? But the United States has a lot of leverage on the Security Council and on the international stage. And I think that they can use that to pressure Israel towards the right of return. But I think even domestically, that's something we often don't talk about. There's a lot the United States can do domestically to empower the grassroots movements that will lead to that legislative shift happening in Israel. Of course, obviously stopping the suppression of Palestinian activists on campus and the surveillance of Palestinian activists here in the United States. I mean, that right away, that's a big move forward. And I think the United States has a lot of connections with Israel in terms of being able to counteract not counteract, but get them to stop barring Palestinians from entrance, Palestine activists. And I think the pushback against punishing and suppressing Palestine activism will lead to the movement being able to flourish and allow for the right of refugees to return home.
There are people who are calling no ceasefire, no vote in states like Pennsylvania, Minnesota, etc. Are you comfortable with that? I'm speaking now. I'm asking you personally, not the organization. Sure. You personally, as a condition for voting. In other words, if Kamala Harris were to say today, I'm demanding an immediate ceasefire and I'm ordering a weapons embargo until the ceasefire happens, would that make you feel sufficient progress to actually not to say to vote for her, but to think that they're moving in the right direction on the issue?
That's a good question. I think yes, it is a step forward. Would it move me to vote for her? No.
Okay.
I have felt very strongly in support of expanding the third-party platforms for many years, even just outside of this issue. I don't like that we are stuck in this bind between two parties. And I think that when we essentially kind of set up this like carrot and stick system of like, okay, get the ceasefire. And then when she gets the ceasefire, it's like, okay, you got it. Like next reward kind of thing. Like, I think what we're doing is that we're setting the bar very low and we're letting the guard down of the politicians. And I see the effectiveness of the past 10 months. Like, I know it sounds really bad to say this, but one good thing that came out of it is that this movement for Palestinian liberation said never again. We're not going to stop at a ceasefire. And I think if we stop there, we have lost the benefits of the last few months.
Right. And I think that can't happen.
No.
That cannot happen. You know, too many lives have been lost. Too many sacrifices have been made. I'm talking simply about the Palestinians on the ground. The rest of us, forget us. The Palestinians on the ground have done the work. Palestinians around the diaspora have done the work. And we owe it to you to not let that momentum be interrupted. I think you're 100% right on that. American Muslims for Palestine has its own set of initiatives and campaigns. Is there anything you want to let us know about? What are you guys up to that we should know about and that we can support?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. Obviously, we do like local educational initiatives, which is one. Well, do you want me to speak from the local side or the national side?
Whichever you prefer.
Yeah, I'll speak from the local side for now because that's just what I'm most connected to at this moment. Yeah. We do a lot of educational campaigns. We table at different like county fairs. We do teach-ins at schools and universities and churches and all sorts of institutions. But as far as like the biggest kind of public pressure campaigns that we're working on, we are part of the Free Palestine Coalition's Divest Minnesota campaign. And that kind of ties into everything that we're talking about. We have the State Board of Investments meeting coming up next week, which is the quarterly meeting that happens. And State Governor Walz is a part of that meeting. He leads the meeting. So we have been working for a long time on getting Minnesota to divest. So we've done a lot of, we've protested, we've disrupted, we've done civil disobedience. And what we're going to do next week is we're packing the meeting and we're making sure that Governor Walz hears that he's our next vice president. He's gotta push for that divestment, push for a free Palestine.
Because it'd be really bad if he can't deliver Minnesota. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like again, the pressure applied matters, and it's something that I think we need to take quite seriously. I think it's something that I hope people pay attention to. But all of you people out there who are romanticizing Tim Walz governorship or vice presidency, I hope you've heard what my guest has said. Sana has broken down all the things that have happened, broken down all the interruptions in logic, all the gaps and contradictions of progressive values and politics that have occurred under his leadership. We have to take that seriously. You can make your own determinations about what that means. But at the very core, you cannot assume that because Josh Shapiro may have been a worse choice, and I absolutely believe he was, that doesn't mean that everybody else is a good choice and that we no longer have to struggle for a free Palestine. That is absolutely not true. Anyway, Sana Wazwaz, thank you so much for joining me and best of luck with everything you're doing. We stand in solidarity, unwavering solidarity with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Elon Musk. He is up to no good as always, and it's getting worse. Stay here. All right, family, welcome back to Night School. So much going on in the world. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so the world knows that you're here, checked into the classroom, ready to break stuff down. If you're here for the first time, welcome. I hope you're enjoying yourself. If you're here for a long time, I hope you have hit the subscribe button, because if you're here all the time lurking, we want you to be family. All right, let's talk. The most vocal, and I mean vocal, billionaire tech bro, the guy who irks my soul, Elon Musk, is stoking fear in the UK. See, the country right now is at the center of far-right riots that have been fueled by racism and Islamophobia. Now, there's a lot of things you can do in the face of racist and Islamophobic riots. Mainly, you could speak out against them. But, of course, Elon Musk can't do that. Instead of condemning what's taking place, Elon Musk is using his own platform, X, to spread dangerous and racist rhetoric, even posting, quote, "Civil war is inevitable." This man said civil war is inevitable. He said that in response to a post that falsely blamed a mass migration for the violence that the country was seeing. Downing Street condemned Elon Musk, as any political body, any White House, anybody should, right? Saying there is no justification for his comments, and added that, quote, "violent thuggery has no place either on our streets or online." Now, the riots broke out last week after far-right groups went on social media, again, falsely blaming a Muslim asylum seeker for a stabbing attack that killed 3 children. Now, in reality, a Muslim asylum seeker didn't stab anybody. The suspect is a 17-year-old boy who was born not outside the United States, not in the axis of evil, not in some dark continent country. He was born right in the UK. Now, in response to the spread of this disinformation all through the internet, PM Keir Starmer had this to say.
Clear that the criminal law applies online as well as offline, and I'm assured that that's the approach that is being taken. Whatever the apparent motivation, this is not protest, it is pure violence, and we will not tolerate attacks on mosques or our Muslim communities. So the full force of the law will be visited on all those who are identified as having taken part.
Now, this seems like a reasonable statement that shouldn't, incur a whole lot of drama, stress, or protest. But Elon Musk is Elon Musk in it these days, so he didn't stop. Instead, he trolls the prime minister by saying, quote, "Shouldn't you be concerned about attacks on all communities?" He basically all lives matter the situation. Elon Musk is trash. Can I just say that? Elon Musk is garbage. Elon Musk is the most despicable human being that I see every day on the internet. There's more despicable people in the world. I'm sure there's somebody who beats children or tortures puppies. And I have no evidence that Musk does either so far. But what I do know is that Musk is human garbage because he uses his platform and his power and his money to destroy lives, to reinforce hatred, to spread disinformation. Elon Musk is awful for all of those reasons. And right now, at a moment of rioting, at a moment of violence, of anti-Black violence, anti-brown violence, anti-Muslim violence, Elon Musk is stoking the flames of hate. This is why Elon Musk should not be allowed to own X. I'm not saying government take over. I'm not saying Big Brother, none of that. I'm just saying from a moral and ethical perspective, I wish he didn't have this kind of power. And because he's a billionaire, and because he has reach and money and resource and access, he doesn't have to listen to anybody. He's a Kanye West on steroids. Because of that, he's going to continue to do this. And because he's a white man who feels like he's aggrieved whenever white men don't have absolute power and control over the world, he's going to do even more this election cycle. So expect a lot of Elon Musk drama. Expect a lot of Elon Musk complaining. But I don't care about the drama and the complaining. That's his right. But when he says things like civil war is inevitable, he's not just reflecting an opinion. He's not just articulating an idea. He is suggesting to the world that a civil war is going to happen. And then when people are thinking about doing things like destroying the Capitol or waging an insurrection like we did here in the United States on January 6th a few years ago, when they have that idea in their head and then they hear somebody powerful and influential saying, well, it is inevitable, then they're energized. They get that battery in their back to go do it. So Elon Musk isn't just reflecting a problem, he is causing a problem, and he must be stopped. And when I say must be stopped, I want to be very clear. I'm not telling y'all to go do any physical harm to Elon Musk. I'm not telling y'all to go do nothing crazy because I don't want that on my conscience. Damn sure don't want it on my police record. What I am saying is he must be refuted intellectually. He must be challenged rhetorically. He must be defeated politically. He must be dominated economically in such a way that the people reclaim the voice of truth and justice wherever he is. All right, family, I want to thank you for watching Night School. That is our show tonight. I hope you enjoyed everything. Hit the like button if you did. Hit the like button even if you didn't. Also, hit the subscribe button. See, when you hit the like button, you let the YouTube algorithms know that you rock with us and that you value this content so that corporate media doesn't have the only game in town. When you hit the subscribe button, it expands our social media footprint, which allows us to get the content out to even more people. And of course, if you're so inclined, hit that join button. By hitting the join button, you can help us by becoming a monthly paid member of the channel. If you're on your desktop, just hit the join button. If you're on your phone, go to the description and you'll find the link to joining and do it. Even if you do the bronze package, which we appreciate so much, at $3.99 a month, you give us so much economic stability and support to do the work that we do. You can go all the way up to the diamond package every month. And when you do that again, you give us the legs and the support we need to do the work that we do. But if you can't make a monthly commitment, that's okay. I ask that you make a tuition payment for the month. Everybody go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle and make a donation of whatever amount you want. If you give $1, we are eternally grateful. If you give $1 million, we are eternally grateful. Elon Musk, if you're watching, you should give $10 million just because we've earned it. But if you can't decide an amount, let me suggest if everybody right now watching were to donate $10, if every single person watching this program right now were to donate $10, we will be able to meet our financial goals for the month. We'd be able to keep airing Night School Monday to Friday at 9 p.m. Office Hours, the intellectual deep dive with a powerful intellectual every Sunday at 9 p.m. Coffee and Books podcast Saturdays at 9 a.m. And of course, the Classroom in the Cell with Mumia Abu-Jamal every Sunday at 9 a.m. Not to mention all the other content that you see on the channel. We do it all without a billionaire backing us. We do it all without corporate media underwriting or sponsoring. We do it all from the power of the people. And that is you. So again, no amount is too small. No amount is too big. If you could do $10, we'd be grateful. But anyway, we just ask that you continue to support the channel. And support ain't just money. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Share the content. But most of all, keep studying. Because that's what Night School is all about. I'll see you tomorrow night. Peace.